Nick, if I was able to help you discover $1 million that was passing through your hands that you were losing, unknowing or unnecessarily, how many of those dollars would you want back?
Uh, as many as I can get.
Okay. How old are you today?
I'm 28.
28. All right. And most people, they're looking at 65 as kind of retirement age when they want to sail off into the sunset.
For
Uh,
sure.
where where do you see that? Do you want it younger, older, same?
I mean, realistically, it would probably be the same, but I mean, if I could, I'd prefer to maybe do like, I don't know, like 60.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
know it's only a few years, but those few years can mean a lot for sure. So, and
Look,
thinking
you're
about
young.
where we're at with like having kids and stuff, we don't have any kids yet, and so be able to get all the kids out of the house by that point too would be ideal.
I get it. We started way late in comparison to where we live. I was
Sure.
33 when we had our first one, 36 on our second.
I very well
Um,
could be that at that point. So, yeah.
very well could be. Here's the thing. Even though I was 36 on the second set of twins, we're empty nesters about the same time all of our friends are going to be empty nesters.
Mm,
So that time frame, it kind of hits about the same point.
that's fair.
At 36, my younger set of twins, they graduate from high school when I am 54. And
Mm,
so in reality, 55, 56, we're really kind of that empty nester setup, having
that's
started
fair.
so far behind everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the age of 28, if we do look at the age 65 as retirement, that's 37 years. That's a
Mm.
lot of time to have everything work out for you. So, Nick, at this point, where you are today, what is your current household income?
Are we taking annual or
Yes,
monthly?
and
Annual.
annual.
Okay. It's about 70,000 a year.
Perfect. And I'm assuming that your income is increasing year over year.
Not every year,
Okay.
but it's keeping a little steady right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that I'm
But
assuming that that's because of you've been growing the business, building it,
yeah, yeah, that's a
and
big part of it. And then also my wife is in her graduate program right now. So and she graduates next year. So that
okay,
income will very likely increase sometime mid next year. At least I'm hoping hoping that
right.
she starts making some real money when she graduates, but we'll see.
Okay. All right. If nothing else, that is a reduction in costs of going to school,
Hmm.
which does free up income. But let's look at your income primarily for the time being. I'm assuming that your goal is to build on that and increase it year over year because your focus is building and growing the business.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, national statistics and all the data that they've compiled shows us that on average income increases at 6.9% annually. Some people want to run with that number, some want to go a little more conservative. If we're looking at year over year increase in your income, where do you think you'll be consistently?
Um, let's just to be safe, let's say that just because I don't know just even over the next few years, but it very well could spike in the next 5 years, and it could be way over that because we've talked about that, but
Right.
I don't know for sure.
All right. So you're thinking let's run with national average. Did I
Sure,
understand that right?
sure,
Okay.
yeah,
All right. So we'll go
we'll be a
six
little
point
conservative here just to be safe.
little conservative. And so instead of 6.9, go six.
No, 6.9 is fine.
6.9 is fine. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What that means then is this year we're looking at 70,000. Following year, just shy of 75. Then we're just shy of 80. And it compounds every single year because as you add that 6.9%, it's not 6.9% on that starting year, but what you made the year before. So it really begins to pick up momentum.
Right, yeah, makes sense.
So, Nick, over the next 37 years, that means almost $11 million if your wife never enters the job force is going to pass through your hands. Did you think it would be that much money?
No, just because I didn't think my income could get that high at the end of 37 years. I just didn't realize that people's income would get that high. Because that seems really high at the end of 37 years. What would that be?
Well, so what that ends up being is each year, here's your income
Sure.
column.
Sure.
Okay. So if you stayed the course by year 37, you're at $750,000 a year in income.
Is that accurate? Like the even people that are that close to retirement will see a 6.9 average, or is it just because it's an average built out over that many years?
It's an average built out over that number of years.
Wow.
And there are several things that will factor into it. There's is you improve your skills and you get promotions at work. Well, a lot of times those promotions come with a much bigger bump than 6.9.
Hmm.
Okay. So if you're in the same role for 2 or 3 years, that bump may be 2 or 3%. But then you get a promotion and you move into a corner office, and that jump is much more significant. So it's
Sure.
not necessarily a linear 6.9%,
Right.
but when you
Right.
factor it over the course of a career, that's where they're coming in with those numbers. And then when you take all of the salary and the increases year over year over a 37-year period of time, that's where you come up with having nearly $11 million pass through your hands.
Hmm.
Okay. Nick, how many of those dollars would you want to protect and make sure that your family received no matter what?
Probably the same answer as before, as much as I could.
As many as
I
you
don't
could.
I don't know if I've got an exact number in mind, but
Sure, sure. But it's one of those things. We love our family. We want to make sure that they're taken care of.
sure.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, we live in the real world. We're not able to save and invest every single one of those dollars.
Hmm.
We end up having to pay for things like sleeping inside and all of these other fun things, and that costs money. And what we have found is Americans are horrible at saving money. We have a propensity to spend almost everything that comes through our hands. And the national savings rate, as they've done all the research, is at 4%. Where do you think you fall according to national average? Do you think you're above, below, or kind of on track with it?
I would say we probably save right now maybe about. I would say we're above that. I mean, right now we're
Yeah.
trying to be a little bit more uh, like frugal with our money, but part of that too is we just moved, and so we have a lot more expenses right now.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
with just new things and everything like that. But generally, on average, I think we're saving about 10%.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
You're way, way above national average. So what that means is 63,000 of those dollars is going to get spent on an annual basis. So you'll capture
Okay.
7, spend the other 63. Um, but as income increases, we're going to see that spending increase as well. So if we're at 6.9% increase of income, then this year you spent 63, next year 67, uh, following year almost 72, and it just kind of goes from there.
Sure.
Okay. Now, as a result on that, of that nearly $11 million, you're doing quite well. You're going to capture close to $1.1 million of every penny that moves through your hands.
Hmm.
The question is 37 years from now, Nick, is that 1.1 million going to be enough to live through retirement at the
No,
life with
no,
No. Okay.
Of course not.
So should we put that money under the mattress or should we go put it to work?
Oh, I would love to invest. Yeah.
Love to invest. All right. Over the next 37 years, year over year, I know some years will be better than others, but as we look at a 37-year whole, what sort of rate of return do you think you could consistently get on the money you've invested?
In just like a true diversification of like my
Yeah,
investment portfolio, of just like putting it in various places.
yeah,
I would hope for somewhere between like 6 to 10%.
six to
Um,
ten. Yeah,
yeah, I would hope so. I feel like that's like if you're doing like basic investments from what I've looked at through like
right.
the stock exchange versus even just like different I mean you've got like a lot of like 401ks and all those kinds of things too, but just on average a lot of those are doing like 4 to 5% maybe, and so I would hope a little bit higher than that.
Okay. You said 6 to 8 or 6 to 10.
Hmm.
How do you feel about splitting the difference and running with 8%?
Yeah, sure, we'll say 8%.
Okay.
80% would looks even better if you take that decimal out of there, but I'll take
Yeah,
8.
it really would. If we were able to crush 80% year over year
That would be amazing.
at 8% over the next 37 years, that would put you at $3.7 million.
Hmm.
Okay. Remember the last year that you would be working at age 64, you're making three-quarters of a million.
Right.
So with that 3.7 million, would that allow you to enjoy and maintain, do you think, that lifestyle over the next 20 to 30 years in retirement? Would that be enough?
Um, I mean, if you really factor it out, I mean, if you're thinking like, um, I don't know, if I was 65, right? That's what we were talking about retirement. If I was
Hmm.
65 and I live another 20 years, that's I don't know if this is calculating taxes at all or anything like that, but I mean, let's
No.
say tax free, you've got like um, not quite $2 million a year. You got like 1.9 almost. And so, or for over 10 years, so you're thinking like maybe 200,000 a year. Like I don't think that's necessarily super all the way there. Like that would not be the most ideal if I was to try and retire and have like a really comfortable retirement, I guess.
Okay. So you could survive, but it doesn't sound like it would give you the comfort.
Yeah, yeah. If you're thinking like, I mean, if you still got like a house payment potentially, just because I don't have a house yet, and if you're thinking like a 30-year mortgage, if I can afford a house in the next 10 years, you're thinking of the 30-year mortgage, paying it all off and all that stuff. I mean, all any other expenses and all that, like, yeah, there would probably need to be something where 200,000 a year is probably not going to be the most ideal.
Okay. To kind of give you an idea, I remember when I was about 8 years old,
Hmm.
and my mom she drove down to this office. It wasn't too far from where we lived to deliver the mortgage payment. And I started asking questions about income. And when I was 8 years old, my dad was making $10,000 a year, and we lived in a nice neighborhood.
Hmm.
Now that was 40 years ago.
Right.
In order to have that same lifestyle and living in that same neighborhood today, you'd need to more than 10x that income.
Yeah. Makes sense. At
And you're,
least, at least. That seems kind of low almost.
yeah,
If you're making $10,000 a year and now you only need like $100,000 a year, it feels like you might even need more.
yep. Inflation and cost of living compounds alongside of income.
Right. Yeah.
And you're looking really at that same time horizon of
Yeah.
the 37 years, because I'm 48 now, so that's been about 40 years. You're right there on that same time horizon.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why I've like looked into options like 401ks or Roth IRAs, and you think about those things where you're putting in so much money and you're to make a return like this at the end of retirement potentially.
Hmm.
If you're capped at like 6% a year, I mean you're looking at returns of about this same amount, but you don't factor in inflation, all the other things like taxes and all that stuff, and it's scary to think about because inflation catches up just as quickly as how much money you're putting into it, so it's not worth the same.
Right.
You think about 3.7 now, like that might sound like a good figure, but in 40 years time, that's not gonna that 3 million 3.7 is not gonna it's not gonna feel the same as 3.7 as it does now.
Yeah. It shrinks in a hurry. So there's
Yeah.
two ways we can increase this number. One, we
Okay.
can chase rate of return. But when we chase rate of return, we begin to introduce risk, additional
Okay.
risk.
Right.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
Now,
Harder
let's
credit
assume for
risk.
a minute I can wave a magic wand and we can eliminate risk and I can get you a 12% rate of return year over year.
Okay.
Okay. Where do you think it will take this 3.7 number to? How much bigger do you think it'll be?
I mean, if you're thinking compounding, it sounds like it'll probably go closer to maybe like six,
Okay.
6, 7, maybe. Oh, okay, 8.
That was a great guess. Um,
Yeah, because you're
Usually
thinking
I
about
have
compounding
people,
because it's like, yeah, because it's, I mean, you're thinking another half, like half of what the original percent at 8% was, and then it's compounding on that. So you need to
right,
definitely go higher.
right. And this is, it's interesting. Most people that I talk to will overshoot. You're one of the few that's undershot on the
Hmm.
effect that you thought you'd
Okay.
have. Okay, but now we're looking at about 88.3, 8.4 million.
Right.
And when we're talking about distribution
Hmm.
and safely spending so that you don't run out,
Right.
because markets go up and down, they
Of course.
fluctuate.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'd be looking at closer to a $400,000 a year income.
A year. Right. Right.
Yeah, now that's before taxes and
Of
whatnot.
course. Yeah. So
Um,
that's more than double.
it is, it is. So we're closer. The question is, would that be enough?
I feel like a 400 a year, it's hard to say because you just, I mean, you want to think that you're going to have a decent lifestyle or that you're not going to be spending a crazy amount or anything like that. But there's a lot of things that just take a lot of money, and you don't know for sure. But I mean, could we figure it out? Absolutely. At 400 over 200, absolutely, we could figure it out.
Can I share a secret with you as to some of those things that happen when you retire?
Okay.
Retirement. Okay. And the reason for that is you're working 40, 60 hours a week in your
Hmm.
business, and now you retire. What do you do with those 40 to 60 hours a week?
Right.
You can only sit on the couch for so long.
Yeah. Can only golf so many holes a day.
And golf costs
And
money every time you hit the links.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Your wife
And
only let you go so many times.
yes, and then there's, oh, we got to go visit the kids and the grandkids, and oh, we've got to go do. And so you look at it and you're like, yeah, 400,000 a day, that's a ton of money. 40 years from now, $400,000 and retirement happening, it's not as big as we were hoping it would be.
Right. And
Plus, we've introduced,
you still have to consider inflation and all that stuff as well. So
yep, that's exactly it.
even though mortgage is locked in and all those things, like still plenty of stuff.
It, you hit something very, very important there. Yes, the mortgage is locked in, but what about property taxes?
Property
What
taxes
about
go up.
utilities?
It's true.
What about insurance? What about, and you're in Florida. I love Florida. Florida is a state that I would actually consider leaving and moving to.
Yeah.
Property tax, or not property tax, uh,
Insurance.
insurance.
Property
Yes,
taxes are decent, but yeah, insurance is where they're gonna kill you here for sure.
because you guys have a propensity for these really big storms.
Right.
and they do a fair amount of damage.
Yeah.
So your insurance, and as the value of the home goes up, replacement cost of it goes up. So the insurance companies have to adjust for it. And there's all of these other things that we have to do. So chasing a 12% rate of return, likelihood of consistently getting it every year without risking a significant loss, we may not get there.
Yeah.
But there's another area that we can influence that bottom line, and that is putting together a structured cash flow system that prioritizes your financial freedom.
Okay.
Now we looked at increase of income. We ran with national average of 6.9%. What would happen if instead of spending all of that increase each year, we captured a little bit?
Okay.
So instead of spending the 6.7, what if you captured 2 or 3% and spent the other 3 or 4%?
Okay.
Do you think that would have a positive impact?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What number would you like to run with on that? If we were to capture, just put a little bit of constraint on that spending.
Um, Again, I would say be conservative. Probably like, could you split it down the middle and just do like 2.5?
We could absolutely do that. We could absolutely do that. Now, so if you look at this, it constrained it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, instead of spending 67 that next year, you spent basically 64 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So your income it went up a bit, um, and we bumped it down a little bit. Now, Nick, as we look at this over 37 years, how big do you think your bottom number is going to be by just a little bit of constraint?
On top of like the 8 mil, or are you talking on top of the 3.7?
Either one.
I would say it probably increased by maybe, if it increased that much from like 4%, maybe I don't know, like 2 million.
Okay. All right. So are you thinking 2 million on top of the 8 or 2 million on top of the 3.4?
Probably 2 million on top of the three, or was it 3.7? 3.4. It was, I think,
3.7. Yeah.
yeah. Maybe like 2 million on top of the 3.7.
All right. Close. You're at 19 million.
What? That doesn't even make any sense.
There's a reason for that.
Okay.
Okay. When I was coaching for Rich Dad, he was constantly harping on it's not about how much you make, it is about how much you keep. And so if you remember, let's eliminate the rate of return. Let's blank this out. Do
Okay.
you remember what you were going to capture if you just stayed at your 10% savings rate?
Like what percentage? Or are you
How
saying
much
like,
money you were going to have in the account?
um, was it the
You were close
3.7?
to 11 million in total income that would pass through your hands. And if you
Oh,
saved 10%, you were going to be just shy of 1.1 million.
okay.
Okay. By putting that little bit of constraint on the increase of spending over that same period of time, you're capturing 7.2 million.
Hmm.
It's that compounding effect, just like anything else.
Okay.
So even though income is going up by almost 7%, we capture just a little bit, and that little bit compounds year over year. And this is why you can't rate of return yourself to the promised land. It's
Hmm.
not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And then it's wisely putting what we've kept to work. We focus on things like tax advantage cash flow engines that throw off additional income on an annual basis. It's things like protecting every dollar that comes through your hands so that if something happened, your wife and kids are taken care of. It's
Right.
about building that fortress around it. And that little tiny shift, the impact of it is incredible. We don't have to chase rate of return anymore. At just 4%, you're another you're $3 million beyond when we were chasing rate of return.
Hmm.
And then if we can get your 8, we're at 19 million. In the middle of editing this video, I realized I made a mistake in the numbers. When we were talking about constraining spending by just a little bit, we talked about restricting it from the full increase of 6.9% annually of increased income to restraining it by about 2.5%, which would have made income spending increase by about 4.5. We did it backwards, and that's why the numbers turned out so big. Unfortunately, they were incorrect. So when we fix this, you'll see that the 63,000, instead of going to 67,000 the following year, we adjust it down to where it should have been, as we were talking, to 65,800. That really now makes a decrease of increased spending that following year by closer to $1,500 instead of scaling it back a few $1,000s. When we hit the calculate on this, however, the end result is still $13.7 million, a much bigger number than if we were just simply chasing rate of returns.
Dang.
So, Nick, if we were to work with each other, where would you want to focus first? Rate of return or an intentional cash flow structure?
Probably the cash flow.
Okay.